The latest Raw recap unfolded like a high-stakes, soap-opera-infused blockbuster, weaving together months, really years, of layered WWE storytelling, and it all began when Roman Reigns finally confronted Paul Heyman in the center of the ring to decide, once and for all, who truly fractured the bloodline. From the moment the wise man shuffled down the ramp with a shaky index finger in the air, clutching a microphone while Bron Breakker and Big Bronson lugged Seth Rollins' money in the bank briefcase behind him, it was clear we had reached that dreaded dentist's moment Roman would later invoke. No more tiny cavity, no quick drill and fill. The rot had spread deep and a root canal was inevitable. Ever since last year's Survivor Series build, when Roman's calls to Paul went unanswered and Heyman showed up beside Seth, questions hung in the air like stubborn plaque. Why wasn't the legendary advocate at his tribal chief's side, and when would either man force the issue? Tonight provided those answers. Heyman tried to paint himself as the abandoned party, citing Solo Sikoa's table-splintering attack on him and Roman's refusal to intervene, but Reigns, stepping through the curtain to a seismic pop, dismissed that narrative with chilling calm. He reminded Heyman that the Bloodline was not a run-of-the-mill faction cooked up for merch sales or convenience. It was a divine, multi-generational institution created by God, rooted in flesh and blood family ties. He acknowledged, almost with a shrug, that Heyman had once helped open certain doors. Sure, he'd guided the champion toward opportunity, but the subsequent 4-year reign had been built by Roman's own sweat and the unwavering loyalty of actual kin. In a single breath, he elevated Sami Zayn, name-checked Solo, and even credited the sideline Jey Uso, whose own mention triggered a thunderous crowd-wide "Waiti" that made the arena feel like it was heaving in rhythmic waves. Roman then zeroed in on the heart of his hurt, Heyman's decade-long radio silence towards CM Punk, abruptly broken when Punk returned and called Paul a friend. The tribal chief hadn't forgotten last year's awkward War Games alliance, where he literally blocked Punk's exit from the shark cage, nor the unresolved tension hanging over that moment. Now, with Rollins injured, Heyman wanted Roman to seize leadership of his new future of the business stable, effectively offering the tribal chief Seth's vacant seat at the table. Roman scoffed, seeing it as yet another betrayal. Not only had Paul ditched family for history's most opportunistic mouthpiece, he'd now cast aside his supposedly chosen champion in favor of the very man Rollins had warred with for years. As Roman spoke, Reed muttered, "Oracle," and Breakker clenched his fists, their anger swelling while Heyman's upraised finger wilted. Reigns called Paul a dumbass, each repetition twisting Bron Breakker's scowl tighter until the combustible NXT graduate finally stepped forward. Fans held their breath, remembering Breakker's post-Mania spear that sidelined Roman for weeks. Tonight, the bulldozer delivered an even nastier one, driving the tribal chief to the mat. Roman's expression, half disbelief, half impressed appraisal, told its own story. Pain, surprise, fleeting humility, yet not an ounce of lost confidence. Reed prepared a crushing tsunami, but before he could soar, Jey Uso's music hit. The roar that exploded rivaled Birmingham's reaction 7 nights earlier when Roman had emerged to save Punk, only tonight the roles flipped. Jey raced in, snatched Breakker mid-flight, and superkicked chaos back into order, reminding Reed and Breakker that messing with the Inoue dynasty remains bad business. In a poetic mirror of last week's rescue, Jey helped Roman to his feet, then stood tall over the fallen upstarts, silent but defiant, his eyes saying, "We built this house, and we decide who stays." By show's end, Roman nursed bruised ribs, yet retained his aura, while Jey basked in a champion's glow, proof that the Bloodline's hierarchy is fluid but unbreakable. All of this backdrop feeds into the looming title picture. Roman briefly referenced losing his championship, making it clear that gold still haunts him, but immediate focus rests on whoever exits SummerSlam as champion, John Cena or Cody Rhodes, both of whom share unfinished business with the tribal chief. Cody in particular has resurfaced with a fresh, almost renegade energy, debuting an entire Stars and Stripes merch line that dropped online at 10 a.m. sharp, a tweet announcing belts, tease, and windbreakers shows the American nightmare leveraging patriotism and personal reinvention simultaneously. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the program, Dominic Mysterio received long-awaited medical clearance, freeing him to chase either redemption or further mischief. Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyrie agreed upon extreme stipulations for their forthcoming clash. Rumor has it weapons are allowed and pinfalls count anywhere, escalating what began as mere pride into something perilously close to a feud of honor. CM Punk confronted Gunther in a segment crackling with tension, the veteran Chicago Rebel locking eyes. With the ring general as fans debated whether technical mastery or Raw icon status would prevail when they finally collide, and the ever-effervescent New Day announced they'll appear next week, injecting comedic levity and tag team pedigree into a night already burdened by familial drama and career-spanning grudges. Layered beneath every segment is the broader metamorphosis of Roman Reigns himself. 5 years ago, SummerSlam 2020 to be precise, he returned as a darker, more calculating presence and, within a week, shocked the world by sitting beside Heyman on that now mythologized SmackDown couch. For half a decade since, that alliance revolutionized narrative pacing, match stakes, and audience investment across WWE. Yet, absolute power eventually corrupted Paul and pushed Solo to interference after interference, sparking aftershocks that rattled the entire locker room. Between WrestleMania 40 and WrestleMania 41, we watched Roman scramble to patch cracks left by that corruption, culminating in tonight's cathartic purge. Despite the confrontation, he handed Solo surprising praise, illustrating that leaving Roman's orbit does not necessarily forfeit family status, unless you betray him from within. Even Paul's momentary plea, "We need you," highlighted how indispensable Roman remains, but also how glaring Paul's disloyalty looked under the spotlight. Heyman's grand declaration that the entire future stood beside him rang hollow, especially when he failed to name Rollins, the supposed centerpiece of that future, and instead tacitly elevated Breakker by letting the upstart seize Paul's microphone the moment Roman turned his back. That single gesture signaled an unofficial passing of the torch. WWE has positioned Breakker as a next-gen alpha predator, daring fans to picture him dethroning chiefs rather than simply pinning mid-carders. Roman appears to recognize that threat, but he also knows Roman Reigns' matches require more than hype. Opponents must exude inevitability. Tonight's spear suggested Bron may finally possess that credibility, but the swift, bruising arrival of Jey Uso underlined that conquering one member of the dynasty only summons another. Meanwhile, Sami Zayn, still affectionately labeled Us, recuperates after a lead pipe ambush yet remains beloved. Solo leads his own faction of merciless MFTs, extending the family tree's reach, and tag team divisions still feel the weight of Jimmy Uso's absence, leaving Chu.